1. Alright, we are recording, Aiden. Oh, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. Anyways. So, for everyone who's watching, our last commentary on JD Vance was over 2 hours long, to the point where my computer literally stopped recording. I'm like, you know what? The last bit, I still want to talk a little bit more about what JD Vance said, but I think we should make like a condensed version of our commentary, because there's a few key points here in what he said on the Joe Rogan podcast where it's very obvious he's lying. It's very easy to disprove what he's saying, or at the very least he's exaggerating greatly, and he's uninformed. And I don't like thinking that we have a leader that's lying to us, and I also don't like the idea that we have an uninformed leader talking to us. So anyways, Aiden, I got my tabs opened up this time. I actually have new documents on Donald Trump, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's get back to what J.D. Vance says about the Epstein files. So, for reference, this is about a 17-minute section of the Joe Rogan podcast that they talk about the Epstein files. For comparison, the whole episode is nearly 3 hours long, nearly 180 minutes. It's 177 minutes long. So basically, less than 10% of this whole interview is about the Epstein files. And if you look at different parts of this interview, you can tell that J.D. Vance has changed his speaking mannerisms. The way he speaks has changed. So I am right there around the time where Joe Rogan's going to bring up Epstein, and he's going to bring up like how he thinks Donald Trump can't be blackmailed, which I highly disagree from being the truth, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's see what J.D. Vance is saying. And by the way, I did speed this up to 1.35 times faster than regular, so that way we can make this truly a condensed version of the commentary that we had last time.
For the president mercilessly on negotiation, I would sort of turn this back on some of the doves or some of the realists who have been attacking the president of the United States.
The doves? Those are the peace people?
Peace people.
That's what you call them, the
Hawks
doves?
You never heard that phrase?
I've heard
So right now we're talking about the Iran war
Hawks and pigeons, hawks
and how they're going to handle it, and Joe's going to pivot into the Epstein files.
I've heard this argument is this idea that Donald Trump, was sort of, have you ever heard people say he was blackmailed into this?
Yeah,
I think that's not true, dude. It's just not true. I've seen the decision making up close again. Whether you agree or disagree with our negotiation, or whether you agree or disagree with the decision to launch the campaign Epic Fury to begin with, the idea that Donald Trump is being blackmailed is crazy to me. Because again, I see the way that he makes decisions. I see the way that he processes this stuff. Like the idea that he picks up the phone with anybody and says, "Hey, I'm going to take orders from you." No, that's just not how Donald Trump operates.
Can you understand though why people would come to that conclusion, especially because of the Epstein files?
My biggest
Oh, come on, I got an ad.
To run my team. Everything's in one
Right
place.
before it gets good.
What do you mean?
Well, the Epstein files were supposed to be released, and there was a tremendous amount of resistance to those files being released, and that concerned a lot of people.
So, I want to make a quick pause here. J.D. Vance asks him, after Joe Rogan brings up the Epstein files, and Joe Rogan's like, do you understand why some people can see why Donald Trump might be blackmailed, especially regarding, like, the Epstein files? And then J.D. Vance, I've sped this up 1.3 times, but he kind of pauses, and he's like, what do you mean? I'm pretty sure J.D. Vance knows exactly what Joe Rogan means. He just doesn't want to address it, and I think what he's doing by asking, what do you mean, he's actually giving himself more time with how he's going to go about responding to Joe Rogan. I don't think he's thinking about what Joe is saying right now. I think he is currently considering what is his next move, how is he going to go about the Epstein files.
If you're talking about very wealthy, powerful people that were engaged in crimes.
I see. So you're basically saying, like, the fear is that whatever's in the Epstein files was used to blackmail, like, the administration into doing the Iran thing.
Or at the very least, the people that were involved in the Epstein files that didn't want them coming out had undue influence.
Well, again, like, say this with all candor, like, we absolutely screwed up the comms of the Epstein files. Like, we just did.
it's going to take a hot minute before he says anything halfway truthful again during this whole section of the interview.
The reason we screwed up the comms is because we were trying to hide something? No. I think the reason we screwed up the comms...
Now, there you go. There's his first lie. It's pretty obvious when you go through some of these files that something is being hidden. And a lot of the names of the victims were actually released, and he's going to say that's one of the reasons why not all 6 million files were released, but it's like, no, that's a blatant lie. A lot of the people who were solely traffickers were clearly redacted, and a lot of the people who were solely victims, their names were clearly released. Everyone knows who Virginia Giuffre is, and then there was Giuffre. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names sometimes. But then there was an Instagram reel that I saw, and it's like all of these people who are like, yeah, I was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. My name was released. And it can be a little bit hard to track. We'll probably have to do a totally separate episode on that, but it's pretty much confirmed that victims' names have been released.
The Epstein files is one. Pam Bondi said, the client list is on my desk, right?
Well, see, they had binders. They were standing
right
in front.
But those binders were largely documents that had already been released, right? So here's, let me try.
So what was the
to defend.
purpose of that performative display
There you
of
go.
the Epstein files? And she was saying there's tens of thousands of hours of film.
I don't know what the purpose of it was, but I know that the effect of it was to make people mistrust the entire effort. And what I think was happening, look, I know Pam, I like Pam, I don't think there's anything malicious going.
So notice how he's saying he doesn't know what Pam was doing, and he has no idea why she handled it the way she did. And then later on, he says he has access to pretty much unlimited information. He has pretty much access to all the information. So which one is it? Like either you have unlimited access and you have some sort of idea of why Pam Bondi presented the Epstein files the way she did, because you had that kind of access to Pam Bondi, or
I'm not play devil's advocate about the whole entire Pam Bondi thing.
give me it.
I don't think they would have anything on her just yet. Kind of like for the same reasons why the Watergate scandal was such a big thing back in the day.
Well, why wouldn't he just simply call up Pam Bondi? Why can't he just simply call up Pam Bondi and say, hey, why did you release the files the way you did? Why did you say that you had them sitting on your desk waiting to be reviewed? Why did you say that we were going to release them any day now? And why did we not release them with the proper redactions and all that stuff? Why did he has immediate access to Pam Bondi, and he could have just asked her these questions outright. And he's the vice president, so he's
the kind of questions that they should ask, what he should have asked whoever would be in charge of asking her when they were ousting her.
Best case scenario, not worst case. Worst case scenario does seem to be real, where we have a bunch of pedophiles who blackmail each other running the country. That seems to be the case. Best case scenario is we have a bunch of severely incompetent leaders who have no clue what they're doing. And I think it's the former, not the latter.
I think Pam was trying to respond to the political moment. I think she overstated what we had and what we didn't have. And I think that she, got roasted for it publicly by a lot of people, including me.
Deservedly.
I've talked about this a lot. I'm like one of the OG Epstein conspiracy theorists. I've probably gone down every single rabbit hole.
Okay, I went over this in the last one. There is no way this man went down every single rabbit hole. We are just in our previous episodes, we have just skimmed the surface of different rabbit holes. And I'm still trying to figure out which ones are even worthwhile going down, given how difficult it is to navigate the Epstein files. And I would like to go down rabbit holes that have potential to reveal something, or you can make connections. I don't want to go down these ones we tried to go down the Pizzagate one. We couldn't find anything worthwhile. However, the coconut one, that one is suspicious. But the question is, did he go down the Pizzagate rabbit hole? The food is in reference to cannibalism or sex trafficking. Did he go down the rabbit hole of Tommy Mottola, the guy who bought Neverland Ranch? They conspired with Epstein to kill Michael Jackson so they could benefit from his death. Did he go down the rabbit hole of Ellen DeGeneres is a cannibal? Did he go down the rabbit hole of Oprah Winfrey's trafficking children from these schools that she set up in Africa? Did he go down the rabbit hole of the one that I kind of like was looking at that potentially they set up the current crown prince of Saudi Arabia. That's why there were so many crown princes dying before the one that is currently crown prince became crown prince. Did he go down the rabbit hole of what the heck was Joy Ito doing? Did he go down the rabbit hole of cloning and Neanderthals? What's some other ones that you can think of that I might have missed?
Let's see. Palm Beach Pete.
Oh, Palm Beach. How can I forget Palm Beach Pete? That rabbit hole.
Let's see. They did touch up a little bit on Epstein being a Jewish spy,
but did he truly go down it?
It's not just that, but you also got. Here's one. I think we even forgot about this in the main video. But Biden's replacement.
Oh yeah, the fake Biden.
Which is funny because they talk about Biden, but they don't mention
the fake Biden. They don't know. I don't think they know. I don't think they're paying attention. I think that they are actually looking at secondary sources. I think they're not even looking at people who are doing it like me, where I'm actually bringing up the files, putting them on the screen at this point. Didn't do that when we started, but currently putting them on the screen as I read through them. I think what they're doing is they're just reading articles that like summarize everything. That's what I think.
Which especially sucks for Vance because once again, as he said, he has unlimited access. He can look into the original unredacted file. I assume that he has.
Yes, he says this.
Files, and actually get to the bottom of this if he so chooses. Odds are he's probably in the pocket of whoever wants to keep him.
We'll save.
Redacted.
I want to save this theory for another episode on this Joe Rogan podcast. That my theory is that he is doing all of this for his own 2028 presidential run. I now believe that he is vying for the presidency in 2028, and I think that what he's trying to do is he's trying to appeal to the boomer and the zoomer base, and he's failing miserably, I think, to get to the zoomers, but I think he's got the boomers based off of conversations I've had with a few. But anyways, continuing on with the interview.
Go down most of them today. Look, the original sin of the Epstein investigation, and obviously I'm biased here, but it was not what Donald Trump and the administration did in 2025. It was, you have to go back to 2007, 2008. The original Alex Acosta investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, where he basically dropped the federal charges. I think Epstein ended up
And this is where he becomes a registered sex offender.
getting prosecuted on some sort of local thing. But the original warrant, back in 2008, what was he looking for? What was he allowed to look for? What were they collecting? It was not looking at a broader conspiracy. So that happens. Okay, Epstein gets pinched. I think he goes to prison, or maybe this is when he was on house arrest.
So he's not on house arrest. He is allowed to leave the prison for 12 hours of the day. He basically is only there to sleep. Like, he wakes up, has breakfast at the prison probably, maybe, I don't know. But then he leaves, goes off to do work. He had, like, special work leave permission or whatever they call it. And then he comes back after 12 hours, and then he brushes his teeth, goes to bed, basically.
But, like, anything that existed from the 80s and 90s up to 2006, 2007, anything that existed that we didn't get back then was disappeared.
That's false. Because I know that we have found... I know that I've seen documents from the early 2000s, and then I've seen documents that have, within them, I think they were, like, copied in there from the 90s. Like, there's reports from the 90s in there. In fact, we're going to go over, I think there's one that I actually pulled up on Donald Trump.
Right, so, like, when people say, has what you've seen on the inside make you think that
for this episode. I think I actually got one for this episode.
That Epstein never blackmailed people, or that Epstein never engaged in broader sex trafficking? No, absolutely not. What I have seen, and I've looked at most of the files, is...
Okay, this is the blatant lie that I said in the longer video. I'm gonna say it again. There is no way that this man can come out here and say that he's seen most of the files. That is impossible. So I don't remember exactly what numbers I used last time, but I'm going to use more or less the same numbers. So in order for him to look at the files, I'm going to just go with all the released files. Okay, 3.5 million, right? 250,000, 3.5 million. So, I think what I ended up doing is I ended up averaging it out 10 pages per document in the last video, or maybe I forgot to divide it in half. Or I know at some point that I divided the number in half. I'm like, okay, in order for him to say that he's looked at most of the documents, he has to read more than half. So I'm going to go with half. I'm going to say like he has to read more than half. So we're at 3.5 million. All right, divide that in half. 1.75 million. Okay, he's got to read 1.75 million documents. Now let's assume that 75% of those are duplicates, because a lot of them are duplicates. All right, let's assume that he recognizes which ones are duplicates. Oh, hang on, I've got to go back. That was a mistake. No. 2.5. All right. So that gets us down to 400. I'm reading this a little. 437,500 documents. Okay. So let's assume that that's what he has to work with in terms of like original majority of the documents, okay? 437,500 documents he's got to read through in order to claim that he's read the majority of the documents, okay? So let's say the average document is 5 pages long. We will go, it won't take too long. Every once in a while, like I think every 20 or so documents I go through, I think I find one that's like 100 pages long or something crazy like that, or 60. Most of them are only a few pages long or just 1 page long, but all the same, then let's say you get like one that's like 1,000 pages long for every 50, then all of a sudden the average is like in the hundreds. So anyways, let's say the average document length is 5 pages long, and that's being, I think, a little bit generous. Well, now we're at over 2 million pages that he's got to read through. Let's assume that he is reading 200 pages a day. Because let's say he's reading on the level of Jimmy Carter. It was what I heard Jimmy Carter could read like a novel a day. So I changed up the math a little bit for this one, but we're at now currently 10,937.5 days that it's going to take him to read through the majority of the documents. So last time I came to the conclusion, and I think it's because I went with 3.5 million documents. I didn't look at doing just half the documents. But this is going to take him almost 30 years to read at that rate, if he's not taking any breaks. If we are counting leap days, we got a few more days that he can add in there, but that still rounds up to about 30 years. It's going to take him about 30 years to get through the majority of the documents based off of the math that I just provided. If the average document is about 5 pages long and he said he's read through the majority, it's going to take him, if he's reading 200 pages a day, it's going to take him nearly 30 years in order for him to get through the majority of the documents. Unless what he's doing, like I said last time, is what he's doing is like he's looking at like a million of them at once in one great composite picture or something. And he's not actually reading them. He's just looking at them like he's just... So anyways, that is a lie. There is no way that this man has even seen 1%, which would be 35,000 documents. There's no way this man has even seen 1% of the released files. I'm just talking about the freaking released files. All right? I'm talking about, we're not even counting duplicates. We're talking about released files. So there's no way this man has been through the majority of the files. He's saying that he's seen most of the files. There is no way this man is lying.
That there just wasn't dispositive evidence. And if that dispositive evidence ever existed, it was probably destroyed after 2006, 2007. Now, look, again,
We have files from before 2006.
our defense, yes, was there some bitching and moaning? Was there some back and forth? Yes. But we eventually collected 6 million documents as part of the effort. The president, people say the president was forced into releasing the documents. Like, again, the idea that Donald Trump could not have killed that legislation, especially with the United States Senate, is a joke.
Nope, he's lying. Once again, he's lying. All they needed was 2/3 of Congress to vote yes on releasing the files, and Trump couldn't have vetoed it. And I think they would have gotten 2/3. Even though we've been going through some of the files, I think enough people hate him enough. I think enough people hated Donald Trump enough where they would have gotten 2/3. Like, Congress was still able to pass it. And in comparison to the people we found on the Jeffrey Epstein files who are in Congress, how many files they have versus how many Trump has, I think they were willing to take that risk of, of potentially being aligned with Epstein, just simply because it's obvious that Donald Trump is associated with Epstein.
He absolutely couldn't have killed it. What did he do? He actually said, no, we're going to release these files. He thought
That's not what
he was
happened.
annoyed by the story. He was annoyed by the Democrats accusing him of doing things bad. By the way, do I think there is I've never seen a single piece of credible evidence that the President of the United States engaged in wrongdoing.
All right, here we go. I found documents, guys. Found plenty of them. I found documents that I don't think I've ever opened before. All right, this is from Jeffrey Epstein, sent to someone who's redacted from here. But the subject is, how are you? Send this interview to Donald Trump, please. It's going to be everywhere. And it doesn't, say what the interview is about. But with that being said, I'm not opening any links that I don't know what they're for until I get insane virus protection or whatever. Because who knows? All of this might be a trap at this point. Never trust the government. But anyways, this is evidence that Donald Trump and Epstein were in some sort of communication with each other. All right, this one right here. This is from some guy called David to Martin Weinberg, and the subject is Reuters lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein. All right, it says the attached lawsuit was filed this week in federal court in California, alleging that Jeffrey Epstein and another man, Donald Trump, raped her in '94. We're planning to publish a story on this suit this afternoon, and we want to make sure it is fair. Is Mr. Epstein available to speak, or do you want to offer a comment on this behalf? My number is redacted, and I'm available anytime. I also just tried your cell phone. Thank you in advance. David Ingram, correspondent, Reuters News. So now we got. Okay, this might be what I was thinking about. So this is not. There's no documents in here from '94, but it is a woman saying that it happened to her in '94, she was sexually assaulted back in '94. Now we got this one. I'll take a look in a second. Okay, this is from 2019, and it says that this is about the Jeffrey Epstein case. There's a man on Miami Beach by the name of Michael Capone who sent shuttle buses full of underage models to Mar-a-Lago casting parties during the time when Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were partying together there in the 90s. You need to interview this man because more than a few of the girls quit modeling immediately after attending one of those parties. So this is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is the FBI with a case ID 31E-NY-3027571, and it says Epstein Jeffrey child sex trafficking. So this document was made back on July 10th, 2019. So I think that's something. I don't think that's the most credible thing on planet Earth to say that he's guilty, but here's another document. talking about the relationship between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. It's very heavily suggesting that they had some sort of relationship that went beyond just friends, and not in the, oh, they were lovey-dovey sort of way. More like they were doing something. So, date, February 27, 2013. Dear Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. And so, Jared Kushner, New York's youngest powerhouse publisher, is celebrating the 25th anniversary of the New York Observer on Thursday, March 14th. Okay, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. The celebration is going to be one of the most quintessential New York nights. We're looking forward to seeing you. XOXO Peggy. And now, the names beneath it, I'm guessing these are the people who are invited. One is Donald Trump. One is Ivanka Trump. One is Harvey Weinstein. This sounds very fishy to me. Katie Holmes. I heard that she's also prevalent in the Epstein files, although I haven't looked into her yet. I'm looking for other names that look familiar to me. Cory Booker. I've heard that name be thrown around with the Epstein files. Katie Couric. Also, I've heard that name be thrown around. And at the Four Seasons restaurant, cocktail attire, dear Jeffrey Epstein. This is just a repeat, it looks like, of the email. Yeah. It's going to defend the... They are celebrating the city's best and brightest, most influential... Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is just a list. Cordially invite you and a guest to join them. Yeah, so after all the names, it says cordially invite you and a guest to join them. So it looks like this is one big get-together for all the big wigs. Did that say on the first copy? Yeah, it did say on the first copy. I was just skimming through it. But this, given the names and the fact that they are inviting Jeffrey Epstein to the New York Observer 25th anniversary, this is suspicious, in my personal opinion. This suggests that they given everything that we've been seeing, this suggests that something was going on. In my personal opinion, they're getting together to party, and we just read one where it was suggesting that, Jeffrey Epstein and Trump were having these young models show up to Mar-a-Lago. Now, this could all just be coincidence and hearsay, but the coincidences are starting to align. Like, have you ever heard, like, if you get enough dots in a row, they make a line? These dots are starting to make a line, and they're starting to point towards Trump. All right. Now, this has got a bunch of redacted names. And it says, I had a voicemail yesterday from an attorney in Princeton, New Jersey. I returned his call this morning. His name is Tom Marr, phonetic, with the firm of Meager, Emanuel, Lax, Goldberg, and Liao. He represents a victim plaintiff of Epstein and is preparing for a civil complaint against Epstein and Donald Trump. So, I want to give you... Donald Trump was campaigning at this time. This is in 2016. This is June 16th, 2016. So, anyways, in the SDNY for alleged conduct that took place there, he's requesting information about other victims or witnesses from our investigation that deal with Epstein's New York residence. I advised him to reach out to either of you for the procedures on how to make such requests. I gave him your office numbers. His office number is redacted and cell redacted. So, here's why I think there's some credibility to this. Donald Trump, people were trying to prevent him from running, but no one really knew about Jeffrey Epstein at the time. That became a big thing in 2019. Like, yeah, he made a little blip in the news back in 2008 when he was officially registered as a sex offender and he had gone to prison. But at this point in time, like, no one's really talking about Epstein. So why is this person filing a civil complaint against Epstein and Donald Trump if his whole goal is to destroy Donald Trump for the presidential campaign? I think that there's more to this story, and I wish I knew what it was. But this is suspicious that he's doing both Donald Trump and Epstein. And so that's the end of my Trump of my Trump documents for now. But I think that is a lot to work with. What's interesting is, remember how in our long form video I said that I am just seeing links that have Trump in them. I'm not actually seeing his name. I'm seeing a URL of Donald-Trump. Like, it's in a URL. And I don't remember that being the last few times. I don't remember that being the case the last few times that I looked up Donald Trump. I don't remember him being in any URLs for the most part. But he was in a handful, but nowhere as near as many as I'm seeing right now. So that is something that is concerning to me. I'm actually going to open up one more because I can. So this one is in 2020. Bunch of redactions. Trump is mentioned twice. And it's... So, GM set redacted up on a date with Donald Trump. That's what this particular email is claiming. And unfortunately, there are so many redactions in here that I cannot tell what the heck is going on. This is one of those ones where it's like, you remember when the Epstein files first came out, there was a bunch of jokes. And like one of the ones where it was like, everything's redacted, like everything's just got a black line over it, except for the elites are lying to you, or something like that, like all these jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the first wave of files.
Yeah. Now that I've gone further in, because I went deep in order to find all these files, I'm seeing less of the Donald Trump in the URLs and more of the regular stuff, but it's still like half. And I'm wondering if what they've done is they've now flooded the Epstein files with all of these all of these documents where he's just in the URL, he's not actually in the document itself. I think there's something fishy going on. I do think they're still trying to backtrack and scrub all this out. I don't think we're going to see justice regarding Donald Trump. He's old. We might be able to get a few people in, but this is going to be a rough one. Let's get back to the interview because we were going to try and make this relatively brief compared to the last video we did.
Doing minors ever. So when the president says the hoax, that's what he's talking about, is this democratic idea that he somehow was a pedophile. It's absurd. There's no evidence for it. Now,
I argue that there is.
Law gets signed. We find 6 million documents. We find out 3 million of them are actually responsive, has something to do with the Epstein estate. We release all of them, with the exception of a few things that are the courts have said that we have to redact certain things and we can't release certain files. But
I do know that there is a file out there, and I might try and go look for it, but it's one where the claim is, and it's simply a claim. There was nothing really to back it, but the claim is like he would stick his finger in little girls to see how deep they would go. I do know that one's been making the rounds on the internet. That one is real.
We did release all these files. Did it take longer than it should have taken? Yes, but we did release these files, and again, the problem here is not anything that's in the files or not in the files. The problem is, if you go back to the original investigation, it was designed in a way that was way too narrow. If there was a broader conspiracy, and my view is that there probably was, the evidence that existed in 2007, that was the opportunity to get.
So when you say there probably
okay, everything he just said, it being too narrow, I don't think it was broad enough. I think they should have cast their net so freaking big that they just went into everyone's closet and started pulling out stuff. Bro, I want to go on a whole, they destroyed Neverland Ranch over a kid claiming Michael did something, and they found nothing. And yet now we have these millions of files out, and we have living victims claiming the same stuff, multiple victims all at once claiming the same stuff, and they're not even going to bother to do any sort of probe. I know way too much about the Michael Jackson accusations, and I now know way too much about this information for me to like not get riled up, because I'm like, this is not a matter simply of just elites. It's about which elites and which group they are in, and it makes me angry because, yeah, it's very selective what they're doing.
Well, as a broader conspiracy, what exactly are you saying?
I think there are a few different options. I mean, look, man, I like you and I can literally do 2 episodes about this. I've gone down every rabbit hole.
No, you haven't. Oh, you have not.
Somewhat true, somewhat false. But where Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, says, "Well, we know JD's a conspiracy theorist on this." Like I am actually. I've gone down every rabbit hole here.
Stop lying.
Look, so there's the theory that whether it was American intel or foreign intel, that Epstein was sort of using sort of the sex ring to blackmail rich and powerful people. There's that piece of it. You know, I think there's a separate conspiracy that hasn't gotten covered as much, which is that Epstein actually, okay, if you go back to the original Epstein guy, was Les Wexner, okay, who, Columbus, Ohio, was the wealthiest person in Ohio, maybe still is the wealthiest person in the state of Ohio. The thing that everybody in Columbus, I lived there for a time, knew about the Wexner-Epstein relationship is that Epstein was his tax guy. That Epstein was like the genius at identifying weird tax strategies that would allow you to not have to pay taxes.
That's a story that's given to the public. I'm not 100% sure if that's true. People are still not too sure where Epstein got his money from, which is very concerning considering the fact that this guy is a part of the government, and the government, and you have the IRS.
Epstein got a lot of his understanding of all that from
Mossad?
Not Mossad, but close. It does solidify his ties to Mossad, though.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be Ghislaine Maxwell's father.
Oh, yeah.
Who was an intelligence officer, and that's confirmed.
Yeah, I know about that a little bit. I haven't listened too much to that recently. I know I'm gonna get all the details confused. But yeah, the Ghislaine Maxwell. That's some other interesting stuff right there. But yeah, apparently, like, he killed himself one day. Her dad killed himself. That's weird. Weird that all the men in this one woman's life, they keep killing themselves. And then she was lamenting that, like, all the money was gone. They think he killed himself over, like, his company failing or something. But nah, I question that.
Stuff that was not on the up and up, and is that one way in which he gained blackmail? It's not opposite of the sexual blackmail story, but in some ways it's you know, you can imagine both things being true.
The fact that he is the vice president, you know, Donald Trump dies, he's president the next day. And the IRS is supposed to keep track of how everyone's making their money, and they have no idea how Epstein made his money. Why? The IRS is supposed to know everything about the money. Yet they don't know what this one billionaire, this one gold mine, how he made his money. Like, how do they know it was not taxable? Or how do they know if it was taxable when they did tax him?
I also just think that there's an element of, he was a scumbag, he was a very sick person, he built relationships with a lot of other rich and powerful people who just didn't have any real moral judgment about the fact the guy was obviously a scumbag. And again, to go back to defending Donald Trump, I know people don't want to hear this these days, but look, who was the guy? People say Donald Trump was blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein. Who was the guy who narked on Epstein to the Palm Beach police? That's in the Epstein files. Right. It was Donald Trump.
So my theory is why that happened is that it's, I mentioned this in the long video, I'll mention it again. My theory is like they're both predators, but they kind of like have this agreement, like, you don't prey in my territory.
Yeah.
They might hunt together, but they will not hunt on each other's territory.
So kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago in 2005. It's obvious that Epstein was a sick man.
Yes, but if people want to say we mishandled the Epstein release, guilty. We did mishandle it, especially the communications of it.
What do you think should have been done?
I think that we should have just dropped everything at the very beginning, and like obviously it takes a little time to review the stuff, to find the stuff, to redact.
I also wonder if Donald Trump just got sick and tired of the group he was with, and that's why they hated him for so long. But I want to know why. And there's something that just doesn't add up with everything. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't know what would be the term, but I feel like Trump would be a plant. I feel like all the hate towards him was not actually towards towards him. It's just they needed the general public
So you
to
think it's
think
more?
that they hated him.
So you think it's more of the left versus right? We need to have someone get thrown in there, take the heat, and then have the general public hate each other. You think it's more of that?
Yeah.
That could make perfect sense. Let's keep going. That's a story for another day.
Things where you have victims and so forth, but we should have just done it as quickly as possible.
But some of the stuff that was redacted, some of the names that were redacted weren't victims.
Exactly.
I've looked at
the word.
What?
Controlled opposition.
Yeah, there you go. They weren't victims. Yeah, exactly what he's saying. So, what Joe Rogan's talking about is 100% true. Now, J.D. Vance is going to make the claim that, well, a lot of the victims ended up becoming perpetrators later because they were blackmailed and becoming perpetrators, which is true. I found a few different women who were in there doing that. They were recruiters for Jeffrey Epstein. But a lot of people who...
There were some, but not as many as Vance would make out.
No.
I don't think so.
No. And then there's, like I said earlier, there were victims who came out and said, my name was released in the Epstein files. And then there are people who were obviously just perpetrators whose names were redacted.
This, and my understanding of this, having looked at a lot of this, but not all of it, is that it is
A lot of this, but not all of it. There is no way you have gone through even 1%.
sometimes hard to draw a distinction between victim and co-conspirator.
Right.
Let me highlight this in a very sort of obvious way. Ro Khanna, who's been one of the loudest voices on the Epstein file, well, he became very loud in the Epstein files the minute Donald Trump became president, didn't seem to care about it during the Biden administration. He actually brought one of the Epstein victims, I think, to the State of the Union last year, or maybe it was the year before last. Well, like that victim, and I'm not saying she wasn't a victim. I don't know anything about her particular case. She was also listed as a co-conspirator in some of these documents, right? So there's an idea that some of the people who were engaged in the sex trafficking were also, facilitating it as well.
So they were incentivized to get more girls.
Yeah, but yes, that's right. But the idea is that it's hard to sort of, it's sometimes a little bit of a gray area between, some of the people who were alleged victims were also alleged co-conspirators, and so what DOJ tried to do was kind of make that judgment as best they could and release as much as possible.
But it's clear that he was trying to get in contact with people that he felt were influential. It was clear that he was trying to get people to get together on the island and meet at parties. So there was something he was doing where he was trying to either influence people or compromise people.
Right.
So it's not, there's some sort of an operation that was going on.
There is a story there, and, I will go to my deathbed believing there's a story there, but I can't prove it. And I promise you there's not some document that at least I'm hiding that allows us to prove exactly what was going on and how.
So he was also trying to get scientists, and this is one of the reasons supposedly
100%.
why he got that
Okay, so
ranch in New Mexico.
So a friend of mine has this element of, sorry, I should step back. Conspiracy theories. One of the
Okay, I will say this really quick because I didn't say the last one. Jeffrey Epstein, I think, was way more involved with other billionaires, politicians, and scientists. And I think people really overlook the scientists. But he was more involved in these three groups than he was actually involved with celebrities based off of what I was reading. Like, as I go through these files, it's not the names you know that pop up thousands of times. It's the names you don't know.
ways you discredit conspiracy theory, I've thought about this a lot, is to try to hide it. Another way you discredit conspiracy theory is by flooding the zone. So one of the things I've tried to do when looking at all this stuff is to try to understand sort of where it fits in and to, try to separate the real from the fake. But one really interesting element of the whole Jeffrey Epstein saga.
So I'm kind of like frustrated with him because he's saying there's two ways you can go about hiding a conspiracy theory. One, you pretend it didn't happen at all. And the second thing is you flood the zone. Well, I think they tried the first option when Trump came out and said, why are you guys still talking about it? Just drop it. Just drop the Epstein files. We're done talking about this. I think that's the first thing they tried to do. They tried to get us to forget it. And unfortunately, Congress voted to release them. Now, I think what they're trying to do now, and I think one of the reasons why he is doing this interview, is to flood the zone.
Okay, so he dies in 2019, right? This is at the very end of the first Trump administration. His death coincides very, very closely. This is not my observation. This is a friend, but I don't want to reveal confidences here. It coincides very closely with the end of what you might call the era of censorship in academia. So back in 2019, 2020, we reached sort of peak academic censorship, where people wouldn't publish a medical study because it might have sort of disparate impact and racial undertones, or people were getting fired from academia for not doing land acknowledgments, stuff like that, okay? I'm not saying that stuff has completely gone away, but But Epstein, we know, was...
Okay, that was something that I can attest to, having been in college during 2019. That was something I actually noticed. Everything he just mentioned about... He was talking about, like, the acknowledging the land, I think he talked about DI there or whatever, but he was... All the stuff that he is mentioning about, like,
exactly what was going on and how.
So he was also
how colleges were being influenced to take on this, like, woke,
so the ranch in New Mexico.
So a friend of mine has
this
element.
very woke positioning.
Theories.
I did see a lot of that when I was going to college.
Is try to hide it.
And I did see that being encouraged when it came to doing research.
Looking at all this stuff is try to
So
understand.
I just rewinded a second.
And then, try to separate the real from the fake. But one really interesting element of the whole Jeffrey Epstein saga. Okay, so he dies in 2019, right? This is at the very end of the first Trump administration. His death coincides very, very closely. This is not my observation. This is a friend, but I don't want to reveal confidences here. It coincides very closely with the end of what you might call the era of censorship in academia. So back in 2019, 2020, we reached sort of peak academic censorship, where people would publish a medical study because it might have sort of disparate impact, racial undertones.
Okay, that's what I was thinking about with the DEI stuff. But yeah, I did notice a lot of that when I was going to college at this time. Is that there was a huge push to focus on, the disparity of and this disparity, impact of disparity when it came to like racist undertones or something like that. There was a huge talk around that back in 2019.
Where people were getting fired from academia.
And it kind of went away during the
shutdowns.
shutdowns.
I'm not saying that stuff has completely gone away, but Epstein, we know, was funding a ton of scientists. By the way, where does money come from? He's funding a ton of scientists. But like when he died, it's almost like the era of censorship started to break. Because he was also plugged into a lot of, in academia, but also, he's plugged into the social media companies. Like, this is a dude who knew everybody. He knew everybody. So, look,
where did his money come from?
Well, from given, part of it is suspect tax advice and setting up tax schemes for a lot of very, very rich people.
Right, but why was
And
he motivated to influence academia, and what was the purpose?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I have theories. There's of course
Well, most people think he was Mossad.
Yeah, Mossad or CIA or some other deep state, whether in America or Israel or another country, or both. Look, he clearly had connections to the highest levels of American intelligence. He clearly had connections to the highest levels of Israeli intelligence. In fact, one of the interesting things the Epstein saga reveals about, and I try to make this point, this is one of the reasons why I'm always careful, and I say there are some elements within the Israeli government who don't like our peace process, because there are a lot of elements within the Israeli government that actually do like our peace process. They recognize that this indefinite campaign is not good for them either. And the Epstein thing is interesting because as much as I know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, not a particularly popular person in the United States of America right now, Epstein seemed to be connected to the elements of the Israeli deep state that were left of center. Like, I've always found that fascinating. It wasn't like he was super connected to the right of center of Israeli politics. America, he was connected across the board. Like, he had Republican friends, he had Democratic friends, he had...
I'm going to stop right here. In our other video, the long form video, I found this video of Trump saying that Jeffrey Epstein was only connected to Democrats. That's what Trump says. And now here's J.D. Vance, it's like, 8 months later, he's saying, it was both Republicans and Democrats.
Much deeper connections to the Israeli left of center than right of center. I don't know what that means.
He was hanging out with Steve Bannon and Noam Chomsky.
Exactly. He had, again, in America, he had friends across the political spectrum in a way he didn't necessarily have in Israel.
I had one of my guests try to get me to meet him.
Really?
Yeah.
When?
2017.
Okay. He goes on to claim that you can find this email. I tried to find this email. Maybe I'll try DuckDuckGo at some point. But last video, I tried to find it with using Google, and then I tried to use Jeffrey Epstein file site, and here's what I got. I got 9 results and nothing. So according to the article, Director Patel has been open to us. So it's like there is nothing about an interview potentially being done or between Joe Rogan and Epstein, or potentially Joe Rogan meeting Epstein. This is all about something to do with a push-up bra and then, Joe Rogan doing an interview. I don't know, but it has nothing to do with with Joe Rogan meeting up with Epstein at any point in time.
See, that's crazy to me. Because at that point, he'd already gone down for at least one, like, sex abuse thing.
That was my position. I'll show you the emails.
Okay.
They're kind of funny.
Please show all of us, because I can't find them, Joe.
People can find it. Yeah. I don't want to.
No, we can't. I can't find them, Joe.
But I Googled it, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
See, but this goes back to my original
But this is part of what he was doing, right? He wanted to get influential people.
But you go back to the original...
I found clips of him talking about it in other episodes, but I can't find the actual emails.
Happened from the 90s to 2007. That's when he was at the peak of his power. That's when he hadn't yet gone down in a sex abuse scandal. Like, to your point, right? Even if you have some scumbags who are willing to introduce him to Joe Rogan in 2017, there are a lot of Joe Rogans, or at least some, who are going to say, wait a second, I'm going to Google this guy and find out he's a predator. A lot did.
That was really crazy.
A lot did, but some did. My point is that would limit his influence. But if you go back to, like, the 1990s, the early 2000s, that is the stuff. I think that is, like, the black hole of the Epstein saga. We don't have nearly enough from that era, and
Because it was destroyed.
I think we had a prosecution that explicitly was so narrow that whatever existed would not have even been caught up.
Right, so they were...
That is such a long pause, even with it at 1.35 times speed. And we're almost at the end of him talking about Epstein. Like, he stops for a very long pause. He's got this weird look on his face. I think he's trying to signal to Joe to drop it. And he's like, hey, there is no way that we can possibly trace back the Epstein saga back to the early 2000s and the 1990s. And bro, they do this with other celebs all the time where they go back decades and then they open up an investigation. Why can't we do it with the Epstein files where there's at least a few that go back to the early 2000s and the 1990s? I know I've seen a few. I know I've seen emails dated as early as 2003. I think I actually saw a few dated as early as like 2000, before 9/11. So, I think right now what JD Vance is doing is signaling to Joe, hey, drop the Epstein files, we're not going to talk about this anymore.
Specifically going after him for underage sex. And they didn't look at the full picture.
Joe's not getting the memo.
They didn't even try to.
Well, that was one of the things about the prosecutor was told that he was above their pay grade. I mean, it was one of the things that
He said it was like CIA or something,
yeah,
right?
He said I was told he was intelligent.
Right. And yes, I've asked were there documents connecting Jeffrey Epstein directly to our intelligence agencies or anybody else's, and the answer is no. But if that shit existed, it wouldn't exist in 2026.
What is it like being the vice president? Like, how much access do
You see, and now here's Joe finally pivoting from that. Like, now that JD Vance has said doesn't exist, he's taking a glass of water. There's something here that I believe that he is signaling, hey, drop the Epstein files, because right now, we're just going to go off and talk about...
So I have, like, effectively unlimited access to information.
There you go! Unlimited access to information.
Things that I've learned.
And now he's going to... Okay, I'm going to stop right here, set it back, and we're just going to look at how he talks about aliens versus how he talks about the Epstein files. But he just, like, goes off in the aliens, and this is it. This is the end of the Epstein conversation. And here he is claiming that he has unlimited access to information, and he wants to know about the aliens. And it's like, wait a minute. You're all gung-ho about the aliens. You're a father. You have no vested interest in, 14-year-olds being sex trafficked to a guy in his 50s on an island. You have no vested interest in that. You have kids. There were boys too, so it doesn't even matter if he's got sons or daughters. You have no vested interest with all this unlimited access you have to information. You are more concerned with aliens that may or may not exist, that have never really impacted the day-to-day lives of everyday Americans that we know of, as opposed to stuff that we know actually happened with living victims. This is frustrating as heck. So let's go a few minutes in where he's just talking about his own thing. They're talking about fire in the sky. Let's compare how he talks here at normal speed. I brought it back to normal speed, and then we'll go back and listen to how he talks about Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't think I ever saw it though. 1993. Good movie, but sensational, and Travis Walton says they made a bunch of shit up, and that's not what happened. But yeah, The story was that he was a logger in Arizona, and he was leaving
Himself across time and space very, very rapidly. If you're a human being with intelligence, but not supernatural intelligence, I guess my point is, again, this could all be bullshit. This could all be fake. That's a possibility. But if it's real, is there really a meaningful difference between an angel or a demon and a space alien with super technology? To our perception, they would largely just look like the same thing.
I think we're capable of nuance. We're capable of understanding that human beings are far more complex and evolved than chimpanzees. And we could imagine a world where if we don't blow ourselves up and...
I want to speed ahead and listen to mainly J.D. Vance.
But I think that it is interesting to me that for most of human history, we would have understood supernatural, hyper-powerful, hyper-knowledgeable things as sort of celestial, or
we would have thought of a cell phone as being sorcery. I mean, that doesn't mean it's sorcery. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just technology.
You see, now J.D. Vance is like really loosening up, and he's laughing, and he's speculating, and he's having
and
fun.
This is not discounting the
He's
possibility
smiling.
of demons or discounting the possibility of angels.
Well, I guess I understand your point conceptually. I don't actually disagree with this. I don't think we're saying something different. That, metaphysically, there could be two separate things going on. There could be there could be extra...
He's also not asking questions.
Outside of Earth space aliens, and there could also be angels and demons. These could be two totally separate things. One could be true, not
Okay,
the
and
other.
let's go to the beginning of the interview as
I
well,
totally
or towards the
and agree
beginning,
with that point.
where he's talking.
I guess and I'm always a little bit caught off guard by the culture that just overreacts, when clearly the thing what the Josh is trying to get is the overreaction in the first place.
Right.
So you give him exactly what he wants.
And he's talking
the worst
about
he can say is, that was an offensive comment. You get on with the rest
the
of your life.
MMA,
That's
right?
the
This is
worst he
MMA
can
or
say,
UFC?
that people
UFC.
really
I get them mixed
about
up.
it and kind of lose
It would be
their mind.
UFC.
Yeah, he's talking about UFC.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of it is there is an economy that is essentially based,
Especially getting outraged around humor, I think is actually really hurting the country.
well, in that case, first of all, I told
Is that it's a cool town. It's got its own unique culture. It's Texas, but it's also its own thing. But that all of the blue staters moving in were going to totally change the politics and the culture of Austin. I actually don't think that's happened.
All right, so compare all these clips that I just presented to how he was talking when they were talking in the middle of the Epstein files, okay? I'm going to go a couple minutes in.
Was to make people mistrust the entire effort. And what I think is happening, look, I know Pam, I like Pam, I don't think there's anything malicious going on. I think Pam was trying to respond to the political moment. I think she overstated what we had and what we didn't have. And I think that she, got roasted for it publicly by a lot of people, including me. You and I have talked about this a lot. I'm one of the OG Epstein conspiracy theorists. I've probably gone down every single
Yeah,
rabbit
so
hole
what I've noticed, I don't know if you noticed this, Aiden, he's either, when he's talking about other stuff, his pacing when it comes to how he talks is consistent. When he's talking about the Epstein files, he's either talking really fast compared to how he normally speaks, or he's talking more slowly. And then he has long pauses, and he waits for Joe to respond to him. There is no other point in the interview where he has these long pauses as he waits for Joe to respond to him.
Yeah, he's not. When he's talking about the Epstein files, he's definitely more nervous. He's definitely more. I want to stay base. I want to, guard the president's spot, and ultimately that's why he's on the show. He's there to distract the people from the matter at hand, and what is it? So he's there to distract, and he's there to cover up.
Deflect.
There was one other thing. Something that was.
I was gonna say deflect. Were you thinking deflect?
Yeah, satisfy the people who are less curious, the people who
There you
want to
go.
hear everything's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that is probably. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he's doing this interview to quell the people who are not that emotionally invested or who have gotten past the Epstein files, and they've just moved on with their lives. Because let's face it, like, you know, if we didn't know about the Epstein files, life was normal before that drop in 2019, and then, you know, 2020 comes around. We know Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. I'm kidding. We don't know what happened, but Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Anyways, and we know that there's all these files, and we know that there's a sex ring amongst the elite and all this other stuff, and the world is shutting down, and, you know, this unfamiliar disease is spreading all over the place. So, and I think there could be something to be said that maybe those things happen at the same time for a reason. But it was like after 2020, the world was different for a number of reasons. Anyways, let's end this here. I think we did an okay job. I probably went a little bit too long when it came to listening to JD Vance at the end and the beginning. But this is going to be our shortened version. And we went an hour instead of 2. Oh well. Somewhat more condensed.